All right, what's going on, guys, and welcome to another slider video. And these sliders are challenging, but they're realistic to say the least. I've worked on these sliders for a couple months now, and right now you're looking at some of the scores or the results from the games I have played over the last couple of months. They took some time to create, and I'm gonna show you some clips of what to watch out for when playing with these sliders. So the first clip here is against the Miami Heat. The scoring for these games can range. It could be from like 90, probably the lowest, to like 120, which is the highest for me. Really just depends on the defense here. And speaking about defense, that is the point I wanted to bring up. Defense. You see Goran Dragic here. I can't get around him. His on-ball defense in this game is, for some reason, is pretty good. But that's just with the sliders. You guys are gonna have to run plays and set. You can't just ISO and try and force your way to the rim here. This next clip here is going to show you the defensive awareness, and we're going to talk about that a bit later in the video, but we're going to talk about the defensive awareness and how to change that or get it to a setting that you like it to be at. As you can see, the shooting guard here gives a hard hedge, and that is because the defensive awareness is almost set to 100. So let's get on to the game settings now and how you want to play. Alright, so for the game difficulty, you want to set it to superstar, and then when you go to making your slider changes, it'll change to custom. 12-minute quarters, fatigue on, game speed at 50, free throw difficulty at 50. I would bump this up to 50, although it says 45 here. Putting this at 50 makes it harder for the computer to make free throws, and depending on the team, a team could shoot 20 free throws and make all 20 free throws if you have this set at 45. So just put that at 50, and you see here in this next slide here, we have it on to 50. Shot timing. You could put shots and layups, or just shots, or layups only. It's really up to you. It's all preference here. Now, there is a way I like to play with these sliders, and that's just I play only the point guard position on the defensive side, and when I'm on offense, I just naturally let the offense run, and I just play regularly how I would. So on defense, I'll come down the court, I'll call out all the adjustments before the game starts, what I want my computer teammates to do on defense and things like that, and I'll just only stick with the point guard throughout the whole defensive series. And on offense, when we get on offense, we'll come into our sets or our offensive series, and we'll just run our offensive plays and things like that regularly. I think it makes the game feel a bit more realistic, and it really allows you to get a deep dive into the defensive settings and the offensive settings as well that the game has to offer. We're just going over some of the settings right quick, but I think it's time we get into these sliders. This is going to be an in-depth analysis or an explanation of the sliders here, and like the reasoning behind most of these sliders we have here. So for the CPU, the inside shot success, this was at 58, but for some reason, when you play teams that pack and pound the paint, they're going to make a whole bunch of the shots inside. So I think 57 is a good number here if you want to have a realistic field goal percentage, and that's anywhere between 44% to 55%, and I say you want to be in that range. So inside shot success, 57 seems to be the sweet spot, as long as close, as well as close shot success. Mid-range, I'll put that at 58. The computer still have a hard time shooting the mid-range, and it's one of the more difficult shots in the NBA you could take. 3-point success, you're going to see a difference between the teams that can shoot the 3-pointers and teams that cannot, or players that can shoot the threes and players that cannot. I have a couple screenshots from games I've played where I'm going to show you that there's a variety of games where one team might shoot 20% from threes, and another game, another team might shoot 50% from threes. So it's really inconsistently consistent, and I said this last year, this is how I want it to be. I want it to be inconsistently consistent. I want to know each and every game I'm going to play, it's not going to be the same, but I want the gameplay to be consistent. But I just want the CPU to make the right adjustments to try and beat me. Layup success at 58, that's fine. Scrolling down here, you just copy everything you see, or you could download them off the servers. I will have them up here, and I will put the name of these sliders in the description down below, and there will also be a link to the Operation Sports forum page. Contact shot success, I would put that at 58. If you drop this to 57 or anything below 55, the computer really struggles with making contact shot, excuse me. Ball security 50, body up sensitivity 50. All that is 50. For the defense, driving contact shot frequency, I'll put this at 70. It was originally higher, but I had to bump it down because in this year 2K, their point of emphasis this year was defense. And so a lot of these things from last year, I really had to bump down because the defense in 2K18 was pretty horrendous. So it was atrocious. So driving contact shot, all of this is gonna ensure that the CPU plays good defense or it looks aesthetically pleasing. So you guys can just pause the video again here and copy what you see. Still success at 55. Now, my time in playing, we haven't gotten into the defensive sliders really yet, but if you want to change this, you could either go 54 or below or keep it at 55. If you go any higher, the computer is going to steal the ball a lot, especially with the defensive sliders we're going to have coming up soon here. So moving on to the attributes for the computer, just copy everything you see here if you want to try out these sliders. Nothing really of importance here that I would say you need to note for. But here, on-ball defense for the computer, it's set at 45. Yep, on-ball defense for the computer is set at 45, and even when it's set at 45, the computer still plays amazing defense. Last year, I believe I had it at 100, and I was still getting by the computer easily. But this year, like I said earlier in the video, that 2K this year really wanted to focus on defense, and putting this slider at 45 is pretty neat in my opinion. Well, it fits what I want the sliders to be. But if you feel like it's a bit too hard, I would suggest dropping it to 44 or dropping it to 40 just to see where you get at. Stealing at 50, blocking at 50, offensive awareness at 100. Now, you may see this and you may go a little, you may ask yourself a question like, why does he have this at a 100? Because it really depends on the player. You can have this slider to 100 and the players, depending on the player's offensive awareness or the offensive IQ, they may see the wide open guy or they may not see the wide open guy. Like for instance, if you're playing against LeBron James and you give a guy a slither of room on the off-ball defense and LeBron James is willing to make the pass, he's going to make that pass and the guy is going to knock it down most of the time. But if you're playing against a point guard who has a score first mentality, maybe so of someone, maybe of Kemba Walker, and he is looking to get his buckets and the guy may be wide open and we're coming with a double team, he's not going to immediately pass the ball away due to his offensive IQ. And so with this being set at 100, I think it's fine where it's at. With the defensive awareness, this is a very important slider here you want to watch out for, because setting this to 94, setting this to 95 and above will create some havoc for you and it could cause frustration, but you really have to know how to play. So if you're going to set this to 96, I want you to be aware of that the computer will hedge everything. They will see just about everything, all the passes you make, and the passes you make have to be like a split-second pass so the computer doesn't have enough time to react to. If you set the defensive slider at 96, they will play the pick and roll much harder there. They won't allow you to run the pick and roll, but instead the computer will then give a hard hedge to both of the off-ball on-ball defender and the off-ball defender between the pick and roll man. So setting this at 96 could create a lot of issues. 95 is pretty challenging too, but the computer don't hard hedge as well, and you're able to run more pick and rolls, but the computer still play pretty good on ball defense. So if you feel like this is a bit too hard when you're playing the game, I would recommend setting it to 94 or anything below that. I would always go with a 5-point increment, or however you want, 5.3 points, because it's going to change however you change it. Offensive rebound, defensive rebound, set that to 1. Nothing really important there. Offensive consistency, this is how consistent the offensive player is. Like, let's say if a player is open in the corner 3 times, how often is he going to hit the shot from there depending on his rating? He may hit it 2 out of 3, 1 out of 3, or 0 out of 3, depending on how good he is from that spot and the situation he is in. Defensive consistency deals with like how the player tendencies, I would say. This is just a guess from me on defensive consistency. I would say it's just a breakdown of how how the player plays on defense. Does he go under the screen most of the time? Does he leave his man to help the pick and roll game? I think having this set at 85 is fine where it's at, but if you always want to decrease it, you can. And these, if you want to use these sliders as a base, you definitely can, and tweak the things that you want. Fatigue rate, you can set that at 50. Lateral quickness, all 45. Take inside shots. Tendencies play an important factor in the game, especially when it comes to the computer. I would leave these at 50 because, of course, if you set one of them higher, then you're just gonna have a ripple effect of the computer not doing enough of one thing, and you want it to be balanced out here. So all of this is 50. Attempt putbacks is at 30. You rarely see putback dunks in the NBA, and I think 30, you'll see it rarely, but I think 30 is where it's at. It's pretty good. Go for on-ball steals for the computer. Excuse me. Sorry, I switched to user record. But go for on-ball steals for the computer is set at 40. And I will tell you, when you're playing against a good defender, that defender most of the time will know when to steal the ball. So in some of these clips we're going to be showing, I will show you that most of the time I'm protecting the ball when I'm going up against a good defender. Even a mediocre defender at best, they know when to steal the ball. So protect dribble is your best friend with these sliders. The CPU took in test shot is at 100. I had these last year set to 100 just for aesthetic look, but you can always change the success, the shot going for the user, if you want it to be higher or you want it to be lower. Most likely you're going to want it to be higher. Backdoor cuts is set at 40. Files for the CPU, they will file a good amount, but it really depends on the game you're playing. Like I said, I want it to be inconsistently consistent, to say the least. Movement, if anyone has better sliders for movement, but I think it would throw off my field goal percentages, especially like things on fast break and things like that. But I think where that it's fine now, because you could really see a difference in fast players and slow players. So that's it for the CPU, and we're going to take a look at the user sliders. So I made this change today while I was playing the game against the Miami Heat. I put the shot success and the close shot success to 44 respectively for both ones. And I think it played out pretty well. It brought down the field goal percentages a bit lower to where I wanted to be. Mid-range success 45, 3-point success 49, and every game you're playing with these sliders it's not going to be a perfect game, so you just have to really be patient or understand that every game that you're going to play with these sliders, things may not go your way. Just like in the real life NBA, one game you might shoot 50% from the field and the next game you shoot 42%. So it's just all about making the right adjustments, knowing what adjustments you need to make during the game to try and help your team win the best. And we're just going to keep going through these sliders here. Pretty self-explanatory, as I was explaining them for the computer earlier. If there's anything I need to let you guys know, I will. But everything here seems to be fine. Like I said, I will have a link to the Operation Sports blog as well. Durability, this is one thing I'm not too sure of, because I like having injuries in my GM, and last year I had it to 15 and I think it was fine, but injuries are so rare to get in a GM for last year. But I think this year they kind of bumped it up, and I'm gonna have to do some testing with those sliders when I get into GM. But if you want to set this at 50, I say go ahead, set this at 50. I'm probably going to set this at 50 myself before I started GM. On-ball defense for the user, same thing for the computer, 45. Stealing 45, blocking 50. Offensive awareness 55, defensive awareness 65. Most of these sliders are going to be pretty low for the user side of things, just to give them more challenge. Tendencies for the users, I wouldn't say really matter, because you're controlling every player on the offense who gets the ball, unless you have a position lock. Same thing for the computer here. Sliders are going to look very similar, but they're pretty difficult. Files are going to be the same thing for the computer, and the movement, I'm sorry if I was going too fast. Start back from files. And the files is going to be the same thing. The movement as well is going to be the same thing. And that is going to end out these sliders.